Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures and another episode of Books. You're really getting a private glimpse behind the scenes with this one. We're going to take a look inside one of my art journals, and it's one that I don't even really want to show you the first page because it takes you way back, nearly 10 years in my creating. And you'll see growth. There's not a great deal in this one because it's a very large format, and I don't often want to work this big, I think, or if I do, there are other places I do it. Anyway, this is one of the large Dylusions journals. It is 9 by 12, which equates to 22 by basically 30 if you're metrically minded. And it's got really gorgeous heavy duty mixed media paper in it, well, card almost. I think it's probably about 300 GSM, maybe not quite that much. And it's a great book to work in. As you can see, I've barely filled a third of it, but that's fine. It's a place I can come and play and explore things, and you'll see there are part finished pages and some finished pages, and some of them you'll recognize and some of them you'll go, really, Alison did that? But that's what a journal is for. It's for exploring different techniques, different products, trying things out. So let's just take a look. I must paint this red spine because it makes my eye quiver a little bit every time I see it. I'm not red. I don't do red. So this goes way back when I was working as on the design team for Artistic Stamper. So these beautiful Gibson girls, which are Edwardian illustrations, are Artistic Stamper stamps, and yeah, just some texture paste through a stencil there I was playing with. This is one of those lovely little alphabet sets that I used right in the early days. Had we but whirled enough and time, this coyness lady were no crime. I believe that's Marvell poem. Trying to seduce his mistress into sleeping with him. There's no time to be coy. So yes, time is passing. That's the Tim Holtz clock die. It's got some crackle glaze on over distress paint. And as I say, this is very early in my crafting days, just enjoying finding out what things do. This totally unfinished page. One of my favourite stencils though. There's texture waiting there. There's torn paper strips. So yeah, just a little play. I may or may not one day go back to that, but that's also from at least 10 years ago, I should think. This one, yeah, was one of those explosions where something just shifted for me. And I was working with some sprays. I think they might have been handmade sprays. I think I just put some pigment and water into some spray bottles. Apologies if you can hear the train going by down in the valley. Maybe you can't. And yeah, I think these are darkroom door photos. Absolute beauties. And this is all inspired by a Marlene Dietrich song that I adore. A letter being written from a prisoner to his lover. And he wants her to write more often. Marie, Marie, it's called. Find it on YouTube. It's amazing. Please write more often, this poor chap who's stuck in prison. So yeah, there's just some bits and bobs and textures and vintage writing, and that's what that was about. So yeah, music was underlying that spread. This was, I think, from a Donna Downey class that she did eons ago, and just playing with using washes of various paints. You can see I've kept some notes there, knocking things back with baby wipes and I don't know what all. But yeah, these at the time were my colour obsessions. I was either always in blue and brown, or I was in sort of springtime turquoises and greens. And, you know, variations of that have really carried on in my world. Love this stencil here. I think that might be a Prima stencil, not sure. Really cool. Okay, so this is one of the ones where I'm guessing you're going to go, really? Alison did that? I was, for a little while, obsessed by the Tim Holtz Funky Birds. And these are paper artsy Jofi stamps in the background that just seemed to me to fit with the Tim Holtz birds. And as you can see, I'm practicing painting skills, I'm practicing watercolor skills. I've got in the background oodles of crackle texture, which was another thing I remain obsessed with. And yeah, it was the birds looking at the Jofi caterpillar, who's had a little coat of gloss to make him shine. Yes, it looks tasty, but who will end up eating who? It was just the look in that bird's eyes of fear at this caterpillar thing. But even though the imagery is more whimsical than my usual fare, I think you can see my sort of obsessions through here. The blues, the greens, watercolor shading, practicing getting dimension on things. Yeah, fun. And we seem to have a blank page because I just needed to leave that behind. That looks more like Alison, doesn't it? That's an amazing stencil. I'll need to check, I think. Oh, look, helpfully. Yeah, the flowers are a Donna Downey stencil. The little texture there is Crafters Workshop. Tim Holtz quote chips, a little wooden heart, and yeah, the blue, grey, greens. And then that's using watercolours to tint the texture after I put the texture on the page. It's beautifully tactile. And yeah, really a page where I think you can start to see I'm becoming me, maybe, as an artist. It's one of the reasons journals are... it feels very vulnerable showing you this. So yeah, welcome to my interior world. Another blank page, may fill that in at some point. This is playing. This is working with a spatula to apply lots of texture, and then I was really doing that quite randomly. I had no plan, but it suddenly felt like a tree. And so yeah, playing with gesso and various acrylic paints, chalk paints, all sorts of things, just creating that sort of wild forest painting going on there. And yeah, walking through woodlands. This is way before I ever moved to the Czech Republic still, so I've manifested that. Here's another one waiting to happen. That's that same Donna Downey stencil, this time done with something really beautifully textured there. If you can you hear that? That I think is a watercolor ground or a heavy gesso. Well, that's itching to be painted, isn't it? I think that I'm quite inclined to come to, maybe with some, either with some watercolors. If I do, I'll share the painting of that page in a few minutes of fun. I'm kind of itching to get at that now, having looked and felt it. That was a little sketch of my own. So that's not a stencil. That's what I would call a watercolor sketch or a watercolor doodle of some cone this is still at least 5 or 6 years ago. It's probably at the start of me starting to dabble in watercolors. 5 years, call it. And yeah, I really rather like that. That's over some watercolor ground that I've put onto the paper, it's like gesso. Just seeing if I can grab it and show you. It's here somewhere. Not close enough to the top. Oh, hang on, there's some. That's Core, which is a Golden brand. It's the Golden brand of watercolors. It's their cold press ground, and it is like gesso. It's somewhere between gesso and texture paste, but it is designed to go on and create a surface that watercolors will work on. And I love it. It's a very rough texture, so it gives you something like a rough watercolor paper. And I like the loose sketchiness of those flowers. And yellow. Yellow's a very unusual appearance for me. But yeah, exploring how the colour drifts off the flowers into the sunlight. That's very much where my watercolours have continued to go, is that exploration between detail and looseness. Another blank page. Oh look, here's something that will feel more familiar for many of you who know my tags on Instagram. Composition across the page. You'll also recognise from the altered hardback book we've looked at, but on a much larger scale. And use of white space is clearly important here. And I've got both photo booth and paper dolls going on there with collaging of Tim Holtz ephemera. I think there's probably tissue paper or tissue wrap going on in the background here underneath some of this paint or spray or whatever it might have been. And that's a quote from one of my paper artsy sets, quote collections from the Love edition. Love does not consist of gazing at each other, but in looking outward together in the same direction. And one of the things I enjoy about these quotes is that, of course, you can cut them apart and use just fragments or phrases. But depending on where you snip them, you can give focus to different words. So yeah, I like seeing that page again. It's a long time since I've looked through this journal. Oh, see, and that's a favourite. That'll probably be a feature page in the photos. Yeah, again, a whole strip of the photo booth photos in that one. Tim Holtz papers in the background. This film strip ribbon, acetate film strip ribbon, possibly one of my favourite ideology products of all time. There's the Rubber Dance of Weed Love you can see in the background. That's a Crafters Workshop stencil. These are Tim Holtz die cuts. Never stop exploring. And that's kind of what a journal is about. A journal is about continuing to explore. And you can see in terms of collage, in terms of composition, this is again starting to feel a lot more familiar to many of you. This is a mode I really enjoy working in. I love her gaze. She's determined never to stop exploring. And it's one of the reasons I like working with the photo booth photos and the paper dolls, is that they speak to me as I'm playing. And that'll sound crazy too, but we're on Crazy Vulnerable today, so there you go. Another little blank page which I can fill in between. So yeah, this spread and this spread are absolutely packed with story, which I think I'm going to do separately, individually in future episodes, because I think storytelling is such a huge element. As I've just been saying, they speak to me and they tell me stories. And so the whole of this page, again, it's Tim Holtz backdrop paper as the main thing here. There's some of my paper artsy botanical sketches there, the Violet edition, little purple violets, Viola odorata. Hold on tight to your dreams, she was spellbound. There's a story that goes under this about this young woman here that I will tell in a separate video, because I don't want to be here all day with you today. I've got things that need to be done, so I'll just let you take a look at that one. And then again on the next one, a lot of story emerged out of this Tim Holtz backdrop paper, because it's all about theatre and music hall and so on and so forth. And so obviously that started telling me stories and the relationships between all of these women and girls. But yeah, crackle, you've got my Shakespeare stamps in the background. That's one of the ephemera stamps from some of my botanical collections, which just fed into the whole of this theatrical backstory that, as I say, I will share with you at some point in the future in a separate video. And then there's one that you've seen, a few minutes of fun on this, which is my Botanicals printed tissue by Paper Artsy, which is partway through, and I must come back and do some more watercolouring. I've been watercolouring this with Daniel Smith watercolours, get that glow, and yeah, looking forward to getting to the currants. These can be white currants or red currants or black currants. They can do all three, because the currants themselves actually look very similar. Rosemary, that's for remembrance, says Shakespeare. Well, says Ophelia. We don't know what Shakespeare thought about anything, really. We only know what his characters say. And yeah, there's the Culpeppers frontispiece. So yeah, that's that tissue paper. And yeah, I'll link that few minutes of fun episode, and hopefully there'll be another one coming soon, finishing off that page. Lots more space to play in there. But I hope that gives you some insight into some of the ways I use art journals just to play and explore. And this one, because it goes so far back in my creative history, really does have some important staging posts, I would say. in terms of me finding out the things that really make my heart sing when I'm playing and working and creating. Thanks so much for stopping by again today. Do leave a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this little glimpse inside my private creative life. There are other journals that do the same thing in other formats, and you'll see some of those as well. But this one, yeah, just had some spreads that I thought were quite revealing. Thanks so much for watching. Leave a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't. I would love to have your company for this ongoing journey. I hope you've enjoyed seeing some more books, and I'll see you again soon.